All right.
Hi, welcome
Hey,
back to Boy, Girl, Mom, and Dad podcast, and happy Valentine's Day.
hello. Happy Valentine's Day. We're back.
I love you.
I guess we've already been back. This is the number two, episode two of We're Back.
Yeah. Did you hear me say I loved you?
I love you too. You look
Oh,
very cute today.
thanks. I'm trying.
You expect me to stay focused on an agenda and a timeline of what we're supposed to talk about when you look like that?
Mm.
It's kind of not fair, honestly.
I have to keep you on your toes.
You've done that.
Boy, girl, mom and dad here for the good times and the bad. From gender norms and stereotypes to making sure that the butts are wet. Boy, girl, mom and dad want grown-up time, you're going mad. It's a trip, but we'll guide you through with tips and tricks for boys and girls too.
Hi, welcome back. We're so glad to be regularly recording again. And today is Valentine's Day, and I love a good theme. And we are going to be talking about the 5 love languages in your children and just how knowing those can shift your parenting. But before we get into that, we have a couple things to discuss. And one of the things I completely forgot to bring up last time on our We're Back or Where We Have Been episode, and it'll play into today a little bit, but our wonderful, beautiful nanny, who we do have an episode with, I'll put it in the show notes. It's called the Nanny Diaries. She told us about a little incident with another adult at the library the other week. And so, as a reminder, we have a son and a daughter. We have 2-year-old twins, and they were leaving the library story group. And another adult, another nanny, by the way, in the elevator with them, looks down at Cypress, our son, and says, "Is he trouble?" And our nanny said, "I'm sorry, what?" And she said, "Is he trouble? He looks like trouble," in front of our children. And she was kind of dumbstruck and taken aback, but quickly said, like, "No, he's not trouble. He is a wonderful, joyful little boy, and he's a 2-year-old, but he's not trouble." And then after they left the area with that adult, she pulled Cypress aside and said, like, "Hey, sometimes adults ask silly questions, and you're not trouble at all. You're a wonderful human being." And I was like, "Bravo to you." Yeah. Yeah. My only notes for her, if I had been on top of it, I probably would have said something like, "That's a weird thing to say out loud," or "That's an odd question." Be like, "Why would you ask that question? It's just such a weird question."
To be clear here, I'm not sure you're telling people to say that because I don't think that would have been a great response, but I understand what you're saying. It's not
You know
appropriate.
what? So, my sister, who we'll have on at some point, is a therapist, and that's actually she said something similar to me, and then I've read another thing people have said similar of when it's something offensive like that, and usually maybe a little bit more offensive than what was said, I think it's okay to say that, not in a rude manner, but just as a check of like make them think of like, okay, why did I say that without reprimanding them or getting angry? So I think you use your own discretion of when you would use those phrases, but I don't know. I think it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to say it in front of my child, and I don't
The
want you
the
saying that to
point,
my kid.
nobody's disagreeing that it's not great to say. I think your main point, which you've already said, is that Nanny Sarah did a really great job.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So just something to think about. And while we're kind of talking about that, I wanted to bring up like today is Valentine's Day. I grew up with one sister.
Do you want to be my Valentine?
I love to. Thank you.
Oh, great.
We're actually recording this in advance, so it's not even February yet,
Now
and
it
you've
sounds
already
like I'm
asked
not
me.
actually asking you. Oh, that's a good thing.
No, it's a good thing. It's a good
Okay,
thing.
good. Good.
Yeah,
Great.
it's not even February yet, and you are asking me to be your Valentine. So, yes, I'd love to be your Valentine. Thank you. So, discussing in Valentine's Day, I grew up with a sister, and my mom's favorite shape is a heart, which I don't know if that's something weird to know. Not weird, but I don't know if you could tell me what your parents' favorite shapes are.
I don't know that my parents have a favorite shape. I don't
Right.
have a
I'm not
favorite shape. Favorite color is a normal. I'm not sure I've heard of favorite shape. It's great that your mom has a
I don't know what my
favorite shape.
dad's favorite shape is. If I had to guess, I'd say a rectangle just because it kind of looks like a truck bed, but I've never asked him. I'll ask him. My point is, my mother's favorite shape is a heart. And so she loves all things heart, all things the color blue. And Valentine's Day, while not blue, is all about hearts. And so we always celebrated Valentine's Day very largely. And so I never really grew up with thinking, Valentine's Day was just for lovers, if you will. I grew up thinking about it in general, which is I love to do. I love to still send Valentine's cards. I'm working on some right now that I did them from Minted, which is typically who I do them from, and they are so cute. I'm getting ready to send those out. My whole question is, I'm a girl, so I love Valentine's Day. We have a son, and so I intend to celebrate Valentine's Day with him. But do you think it's weird to celebrate Valentine's Day with boys?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking you because I think some parts of society would say yes.
So the question is, do I think it's weird to celebrate Valentine's Day with Cyprus?
Mhm.
No.
Yeah. I didn't think so. I just thought I would ask.
I, no. It's not weird. I grew up celebrating Valentine's Day. I think it was, to your point, probably focused on like who is your Valentine and how are you making the day special for them, which is good. But I mean, I want him to feel loved on that day as well.
Yeah. Did your school send valograms? Oh, so good. There's something about those lollipops, those heart-shaped suckers, maybe the red 40, I don't know, but they taste so good.
Yeah, we called them candygrams.
Oh.
But yeah, same thing. It was around Valentine's Day. You could send as many as you wanted to whoever you wanted.
Oh, they cost money at my school. Did
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
There wasn't a cap. You could do whatever
Yeah,
money
you
amount
buy
you could
them
do.
and you send them. Yeah.
You
They
could
were
even
cheap.
upgrade. Yeah. You could upgrade them, but I honestly preferred the 25-cent basic one with a sucker because that's so good. Makes me
Yeah.
want one right now.
The thing I remember from those is that some people got truckloads of them and others were wondering if they would get one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sad. Anyway, that's why we want to celebrate everybody. Everybody deserves love, and that's kind of why we're talking about the five love languages today.
Did you expect that I would say no, Cypress shouldn't celebrate Valentine's Day? He's a man. No. Keep him away from the hearts. Is that what you wanted?
No, I just wanted to have a discussion because I know that some parts of society feel that way. So that's why I brought it up.
Hmm.
But
Cypress will be brought up as pro love.
like it. Like it. Love it. Before we get into that though, I almost forgot. We have to do our TIFF. Are you ready for our TIFF today? We do a TIFF every week before we get into the bulk of our topic, and it's just a little I'm making a face right now, you can't see it. It's a little maybe argument, maybe disagreement between the two of us. Sometimes we're on the
I'm
same
rolling up
side,
my sleeves
sometimes
to get ready for this tiff fight because I think I
yeah,
know what it
probably
is.
because you already saw what it was. Yeah. You're getting ready to clean the sink because today I am talking about we have this vacuum that's great. We talked about it before. What's it called again? The
It's a
Bissell
Bissell
Crosswave.
Crosswave.
Yeah. So it has a little brush thing in it that you take out and clean it. It gets wet when you
Rotating brush.
correct.
And it's a wet,
Well,
dry vac, so you get like soap and water and stuff on it every time you use it.
yeah, Nick likes to take it off of the vacuum and put it in the kitchen sink and leave it there. And it makes me feel uncomfortable to clean our dishes
Your
because it's
premise
been
is just false already. Keep going.
he likes to leave it there in the sink and then, our dishes and stuff go there and I just feel weird about it. I know like our dishes will be cleaned and things like that, but I don't like that. And then to dry, he puts it in the drying half of the sink, which has our things that we hand wash on top of it. And if something falls through, it hits the vacuum brush. And I know we clean the floor with it. And I know our dishes are clean, but something about it just disgusts me and I don't like seeing it. And I wish he didn't put it in the sink. And so that is my tiff with you today.
Okay. So here's some context before I refute everything you've said. Refute, I guess. We don't have a hose. In fact, the hose we have on this building was taken from us due to
A water hose, right? That's what you're talking about?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. What are you? Air hose, I guess. What else are you
We have
talking
kind of
about?
a hose in our sink, so I didn't know if that's what you're talking about.
No,
Yeah.
like an outdoor water hose. We don't have access to one of those. We used to, but we don't anymore. So ideally, if we did have access to that, I would of course be cleaning it outside and letting it dry outside, probably outside of our front door or something, so it doesn't get a ton of dirt or something on it. So that's important because we don't really have another place to clean it besides our high-powered sink that has a lot of heat and soap all around it. What I typically do, which I don't know that your brain is remembering, you're only remembering the bad things. What I typically do is clean it, let it dry for a few minutes, and then transfer it over to continue drying in the drying area of the sink. My intent is to get it out of there and put it back on the rack where the actual vacuum is after it's fully dry, but I don't typically remember to do that. So that part I understand. I usually do not put it in there when there's dishes in there, and I make an effort to take dishes out before I clean the brush, and I also clean the sides of the sink and the bottom of the sink after I use it. It's rarely been kept in there and I have put dishes in there. Sometimes you have gone back and it's still there because I haven't moved it yet and you've chosen to put dishes in it, but that's outside of the process. So I guess my question back to you would be, how would you expect me to clean the brush that keeps our floor clean without using that sink?
I don't mind that you use the sink. I think the fact that it sits there grosses me out.
Okay, then I'll ask that question. Where do you expect it to sit? Because your alternative is typically to take it out while it's still wet and not dry and put it on a paper towel on the floor, which quite
Paper towel
literally,
plate, paper towel plate. Life is great with a paper towel plate.
oof, that soundbite. You you love to put it on the floor with a paper towel, which basically negates the work the vacuum has already done. So I don't understand what what is your ideal? If you were
I'm
owning cleaning the brush, what would you do?
you can clean it in the sink, or I could clean it in the sink, and then I would put it somewhere else to dry, like outside, or maybe I would clean it in our shower and let it sit in the shower.
Okay. I can put it right outside the door to dry. I can try that. I think if I put it in the shower, the next podcast episode, you would be complaining about it being in the shower. So, my point here is that we do not have an ideal situation where there's an easy place for it to clean and dry. And I'm making the best of our situation, but I understand that
Yeah,
it's bothering you.
I think it just like I want to throw up each time
How
I see it.
about if I understand, if I can agree to try and get it out of the sink quicker or maybe dry it out in the front door, can you agree to never put it on the floor with a paper towel again?
Sure, I can think about it.
Look at that teamwork. Nope, think about it. That's not an agreement. Sure, I can think about it. Okay, great, Tiff.
All right, so
Some husbands are out here not vacuuming, but some of us are criticized for the way that we vacuum. I don't
so
know.
we're judging ourselves on the bar minimum, or the is that the right? Did I say that right? On the bare minimum, the bar is low. That's what I was trying to say. Anyway, let's just move on.
Next thing.
We're talking about today the five love languages in children, and I knew I wanted to talk about it, but I kind of thought to myself, I don't need to read the book. I've already read the book because there's a book for everything really, but I've read the original. They've since gone back and written them for teens, for married couples.
What book are you talking about?
The Five Love Languages by Gary Chapman.
Got it.
They have one specifically for children. So it's called The Five Love Languages of Children by Gary Chapman and Ross Campbell. My whole point in this is that I did read it before this episode, and I'm really glad I did because it's number one, a good refresher, but number two, it's actually really relevant to parenting. And I've read a lot of parenting books, and I've never read one that talks about these, probably because it's very niche and it's kind of his thing.
Yeah.
But they really do pair well with other books that I've read, and I'd highly recommend reading it just to learn.
Yeah.
Now, the five love languages are the same that you find in the original version, but there's just different ways to include them in your parenting style and for your kids. So, as a refresher, they are physical touch, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, and words of affirmation.
And clean vacuum brushes. Oh, wait, that's not.
That would be an act of service.
That would be an extra service. Got it.
The whole point of it really is to say, I love you to your children in the way that they will understand.
Hmm.
The whole point of this episode and the book really is to make sure you're saying I love you to your kids in a way that they will understand. Nothing tends to work well in a functioning family unit if your children's love needs are not met. And I've never really thought about that specifically, but it makes a lot of sense. It reminds me of the book that I read, Raising an Emotionally Intelligent Child, because that's basically what you're doing by employing these love languages. But it's a lot less sciencey than that book. The love languages are less sciencey, and I think therefore just a little bit easier to understand and apply into your life.
Yeah, I got you.
One of the things that the book immediately talks about is that using the love languages correctly within your children can help their behavior. So if you're seeing behavior problems, you might think about, okay, what's my child's love language and has anything changed lately? So it gives an example of a child who is at school and starts interrupting the class a lot, will go and sit with the teacher at recess, like wants to hold their hand walking to the lunchroom and all of that. And so they had a parent teacher conference. And they're like, has anything changed? They said, well, the mom says, I used to pick up my kid from school and now I don't. I just got a full time job. And then the dad used to go to some sporting event, either weekly or bi weekly. And that season had ended or something like that. And they just hadn't replaced the time. And so the child's love language was quality time and then
Hmm.
was acting out looking for attention
Hmm.
and because they weren't getting it at home. So again, it's not revolutionary, but I hadn't thought about the love languages and making sure those are being met well
Yeah.
and to how your kid's behavior
Yeah.
is happening.
Yeah.
So this isn't a magic formula for parenting, though it can seem like magic when you use it correctly and it works. And the main thing is that they do acknowledge that parenting is hard and they have, let's see, 7 things to frequently remind yourself as a parent to make things a little bit easier. And so I'm just going to read to you. 1, they are children. 2, they will tend to act like children. 3, much of childish behavior is unpleasant. 4, if I do my part as a parent and love them despite of their childish behavior, they will eventually mature and give up their childish ways. 5, if I love them only when they please me conditionally, and if I express my love to them only at those times, they will not feel genuinely loved. 6, if I love them only when they meet requirements of my expectations, they will feel incompetent and believe it's pointless to do their best. 7, if I love them unconditionally, they will feel comfortable about themselves and will be able to control their anxiety and their behavior as they grow into adulthood.
I like those.
I just finished a book called The Worry Free Parent by Sissy Goff, and something she says in that book that really stuck with me is that it's our job as parents to be the calmest one in the room, which is sometimes really hard. And so just remembering those things I think is helpful. Another thing that book mentioned, as well as the book, The Five Principles of Parenting, which just came out and I recently started it. I haven't finished it yet. And then Raising Good Humans. They mention a lot of the time as parents, we're trying to give 100%, but that's just not possible. And so they give different numbers, but basically in this book, they talk about doing 75%. That's a passing grade. It's well above passing. And if you're just doing 75%, there's studies where if you're doing it 50% of the time, that's enough for it to stick and have a good impact on your children's future. And so they use the quote from John Steinbeck in East of Eden that now that you don't have to be perfect, you can be good. So don't focus on being perfect, just focus on doing your best and whatever that looks like and that being good enough. Okay, now we have the base of everything for the book. Now we're going to go into the 5 love languages. So you want to read the first one, Nick? Or you want to say what the first one is?
Yeah. The first one is physical touch.
Physical touch. So, for example, I feel like this is really straightforward. Any form of touch, hug, high five, wrestling,
Kiss.
kiss, that's true.
Pat on the head.
Pat on the back as you're like walking by just to let them know that you're there.
Yeah.
And obviously, before we go any deeper into that, just we know that not all touch is good. And so, one of the books that they reference within this book is called Helping Victims of Sexual Abuse by Lynn Hetritter and Jeanette Vaught. But I feel like this is one of the easiest things to do with your children is just to make sure they have hugs and feel loved. And one of the things that I thought was interesting in the book is they talk about dad issues in regard to this area and specifically in regard to dads and girls. And I think we're coming out of the age where that has been a problem, where guys have been more stoic, especially in regard to their little girls, where it's easier to connect sons and dads because they're typically doing the same things, playing baseball with each other or wrestling on the floor. And I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that, Nick. I don't think that you struggle with this, but I also think you
Can
are
you
more.
clarify what you're saying? Like you're saying I understand you saying it's been difficult in the past, like using physical touch in a good way as a father, I think is what you're trying to say. But what do you mean by that? You're saying like dads usually don't show affection in that way to their daughters the same way they do with a son because they're wrestling and playing sports and stuff with a son, or what are you trying to say?
Historically, like they reference this in the book, historically, dads have not known how to relate to their
Yeah.
daughters.
With
And
respect to
that
this love language.
I say in
Yeah.
general, but it comes out in this, like,
Sure.
how do I hug her? How do I touch her?
Sure.
That type of thing. And so I don't think that you struggle with that, but I didn't know if you had any thoughts because I do think we're growing out of it, but I didn't know if you had an
I
opinion on that.
I think there's also like an aspect of fragility with women and girls, you know? So like I understand the like I still feel some of this. Like I wrestle with both of them, right?
Yeah.
I don't really have an expectation that I can hurt Cypress, but I am like I think about cautiously, like, oh, I should be more gentle with Olive, and really I should be as gentle as I need to be for both of them. You know, like I should make sure they're both protected, but I don't need to like coddle, Olive and not play as well with her as I do with Cypress just because she's a girl. But I think that's one way in the past that it's been like, oh, I don't know. To your point, I don't know how to engage. But like both of our kids, the boy and the girl, both love to like chase and wrestle and tickle, and like I feel like they both have a healthy relationship with this love language. Um, and I do like that you and I don't really. I don't know another word besides discriminate, but like I don't feel like we treat them differently with respect to this love language. And I agree that we're probably coming out of the like I think we're coming a little bit out of the absent father era. Not to say everybody in our parents' generation was that way, just like that was the consistent behavior. To your point, was dads were a little more hands off with the parenting aspects and the playing and everything. I think we're coming out of that. Um, yeah,
Yeah, they mentioned that they've had dads in the book, the people they work with, who had to really work at it and be like, "It's natural for me to hug them now," and things like that, where it just wasn't like physical touch was. Because there was a time when they're like, "Don't touch your babies," not dads, but like all parents in general. And on the
yeah,
flip side, something that they reference is that is also a thing of the past now is that boys don't need physical touch as much. Like saying
yeah.
like when
I was
they
just thinking about that.
are growing up that at a time, middle school, they don't need as many hugs or any contact like that, which isn't true. They will often deny them, but that doesn't mean they don't need them. And to say like, oh, it doesn't matter, kind of just like the emotional needs of boys has been like that in the past too. It's just not true.
Yeah, like I think in to your point, in the same way that like it's kind of odd to keep girls out of sports or out of the, parts of physical touch that are playful, like it's also odd to like not hug your son and not hold your son's hand and not, like there's points of both of those that are necessary for both boys and girls.
One of the quote traditions unquote they mention in the book for some families that if they were having trouble with this is to whenever they come in the door, immediate hug, immediate recognition, no matter what you're doing. If you're obviously in the middle of a call in your office, that's one thing, but like if I'm working at the kitchen table or if you're walking in and you immediately go to Cypress and Olive and hug them, or like we hug, and just seeing that as a practice, it becomes natural.
Yeah, and I think our kids also hopefully see like we treat our friends and family very similarly in that. Like like my buddies come over, I give them a hug to say hello and goodbye. Not to say that you should have to do that, but just like there's no big difference for us, I think, between how we use physical touch to show our appreciation to our friends and family and them. Like it's not just fist bump with the guys that come in and then I'm hugging their wives. It's like and same with you.
Yeah.
So I think there's I would hope rather that there's a recognition of a healthy way to use physical touch with the people that you're comfortable with, and it's not bifurcated by gender.
This is a side note that I am not a huge hugger.
Don't hug Doug.
And yeah, that's a book we have that we read to the kids. I'm not a huge hugger, and sometimes I just have to like lean into it. My first inclination if I'm meeting you for the first time is to stick out my hand and shake your hand. It's not to hug you. And I've gotten better about that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but my point is it's not gender specific. If I don't know you and I'm meeting you for the first time, that's typically my go-to. I
Yeah,
think being in a corporate setting also in Texas kind of
sure.
lent itself to that, but it was never my first thing to hug, even though my mother is very much a hugger.
Well, and that's what I tried to say, like the people we're comfortable with. Like there's
Yeah.
definitely a different line in the professional, like different line when you're in business meetings and stuff. Like I'm not necessarily saying you should always do that. I'm just saying there how do I say this? Cypress doesn't think that I'm afraid to use physical touch with the guys that I care about,
Yeah.
you know? And I would say similar with you. So like I would hope that him and Olive both are seeing, this is one of the ways that they show us appreciation. It's the same way that they show other people appreciation that they care about. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
You're right. There are lines.
Yeah, I was thinking about my dad, and he is more stoic than my mother, but he, always hugged us, or he would massage our feet, which probably to Nick's dismay, I like foot rubs, so I
What is that?
request them.
What's to my dismay? What are you talking about?
You
Make me
wish
sound
that
like I
I
don't
didn't.
like you.
Wish that I didn't like them so much, and that I started before the twins go to sleep. I massage their feet, and that I'm setting them up for failure. Anyway,
That is not true.
as far as dads connecting to daughters, it made me think of whenever I guess I was 11, almost 12, I started my period, and it was actually a really good thing. I feel like it was very connecting for my dad to do this, but I remember I was in the game closet and I was trying to get, I don't know, a game out, or like a towel to put down to eat in front of the TV or something like that. I don't recall. But he was coming out of my parents' bedroom and stopped and was like, "Hey, I heard you started your period. Like, that's cool," or something. And I just looked at him and I furrowed my brow and I said, "That is the worst possible thing you could say to me right now." And I like walked off. And like, honestly, the poster child for period moodiness right there. But he was trying to connect to me and acknowledge it and not be weird about it. And I just wasn't
Made
having
it
it.
weird. That's funny. I haven't heard that story before.
Yeah.
That's
But
also a
that,
very dad thing to be like, good job. Well done. Heard about it. High five.
but that kind of leads us into our number two love language, which is words of affirmation. So you can say it to somebody, you can write it down.
I thought you were gonna let me say it. You
I'm
said
sorry.
words of affirmation. It's fine. It's out there now. It's out there.
I
Words of
said it.
affirmation. You did.
Yeah. And something personally, I think whether or not someone's love language is words of affirmation, I always try to tell someone when I think something nice of them or think of them. I always try to do that just because I think it makes people feel good. So just put that on your radar. If you think about someone or you think something nice about them or you're in person with them, just say it to them. It's not going to be weird unless you make it weird. But
You just said something that I want to call out. So I agree with what you're saying. When you said even if your love language is not, there's some interesting articles that have come out talking about how the assignment of a love language to somebody in a consistent fashion is not necessarily accurate, in the same way that assigning a personality trait to somebody perpetually is not necessarily accurate. So just calling out, like, you may for a long time have been a words of affirmation and physical touch person, that may not always in perpetuity be your few love languages. So just saying, I'm not saying you're wrong, but just like that's an interesting part of that research, in that we don't want to invalidate or take the importance away from other love languages that we don't think people may care about, um, just because they've been assigned by some quiz or something, or they'll tell you, oh, I'm a words of affirmation person, right? That person still may appreciate a hug, like I'm just saying, let's not put them into boxes. Again, you're not, but just, I think the assumption that we all have X love languages and it's permanent is kind of being fought against a little bit.
yeah, I think that it's something that you should just always be aware of with those you love because it
Yeah.
does change. We change as people, as humans. And so naturally, our love languages change as we live.
Yeah, it brings me back in my mind to the Don't Hug Doug book. I think you should show it, because it's a great book. It also, in my opinion, this like helps to draw boundaries and draw acceptance around boundaries for somebody else outside of your children. So like this book tells Cypress and Olive, some people don't like hugs, some people don't like high fives, some people don't like to talk as much as you do. Like it focuses on hugs, but it's basically saying it's okay. Just understand what people are okay with. So to your point, just pay attention to the positives and negatives of this is my love language, or this is one that I really frankly don't appreciate in the people around you.
Yeah, I think the main reason, well, on this book, I just want to show this page. The last page
They
is a high
love that
five,
page.
and it's so fun. It's interactive. But I think the main thing is that you maybe in like partners, you may be showing love and thinking you're showing love, and they're frustrated because you're not showing love in their way. And so I think mainly just be
Yeah.
aware of it in that sense. I think you can always shower people with all five, but just be aware what they need the most of because they could not feel loved because they're not receiving it in that manner.
Yeah, I mean, that brings me back to a communication principle. Like, just because you feel like you have clearly stated something, the communication is not complete unless the other person has received it and understood it. And that, to your point, may mean you need to present it in a different way with touch, with words, with notes, with actions, whatever else. Um, that just you doing what you think is enough doesn't complete the job sometimes.
Yeah, it's always good to say it when you see it. But I think what's even more special and often memorable is when it's written down, whether it's a letter or an email or a text messages. We have an email that we have already set up for the twins, and I will email them occasionally things that I think of like right off the top of my head, just so they have those to go back and look at. But also, I want to see the memories too because it's heartbreaking and also good that we don't remember everything from parenthood.
Thanks for the memories.
Yeah, yeah. Um, my mom always put a lunch in our or a lunch. My mom always put a note in our lunchbox. That's just like a little reminder. One of the examples in the book was, it was talking about a hug. So that goes back to physical touch, but hugging your child in the beginning of the day could be the difference between a good day and a bad day for them, just because it lets them know that they're safe. In a lunchbox note at lunch, maybe they're sitting by themselves. Maybe they had a rough class right before it. It can really like lift them up. I remember, I still have them, I think, at my parents' house, but in choir, in high school choir, something we would do, I think, at our retreats every year is we would have a piece of paper that had your name on it, and then everyone would go around and write something nice to you. And I still have
Mm,
those because it's really nice just to go back and look at them. I was at a Bible study where at the end of it one time we like had a note card and like wrote something uplifting. It's actually on my nightstand. So people keep things and may revisit the memory of what you said or what you typed more so often than not. And so you have a big chance to have a big influence in their life. And kids at this age specifically take you at your word. And so I think you have a really good chance of having a positive impact and having them remember what you said. And maybe they don't think something about themselves positively, but they're like, okay, but my mom said this about me, and I love her and I trust her and she loves me.
yeah, and like I think equally as helpful as receiving that type of a note or written communication when you're down is receiving it when you're not down, either content or in a great mood, because it kind of keeps you there, right? Like
Yeah, it's like a surprise, a fun surprise.
right, right, but also like it could be argued that you stay in that positive state knowing that you're affirmed and loved because of things like that, and you getting to a low point is because it's been a while since something like that has happened, or you don't feel appreciated, and not writing a note or verbalizing communication or using your words of affirmation in some way could result in that. So you're right, definitely could find them in a low place, but it could also do work to keep them out of a low place.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be perfect or eloquently said. Uh, I'm a type A, usually type 1 Enneagram, where I want to have it like all together and pretty of like what I want to say to someone. But at the end of a book club, this last one actually, when we finished reading The Worry Free Parent, at the end, my friend had us go around and say something we liked about each of the people, and we like to
Mhm.
focus on the people. And like I don't really like to be put on the spot like that, but I can do it and I can see like how meaningful it is. And to have eye contact with those people and say these things to them and really mean it is really special. And like I don't necessarily remember everything that they said, but I remember the feeling, and it grounds me in those friendships and that like community. So yeah.
Yeah, and I know we're talking in the context of parenting and with kids here, but like this is something that to me is a practice that you can get in while they're children and keep it all the way through adulthood. Like some of my favorite moments are our friends or our family saying things to you or I or the kids in affirmation, whether it's a
Yes.
note or a voice. Like your dad's good at this. He's called me before. It sounds not so humble, but like he recognized something he appreciated in me and called me like a few days later and said like, hey, I've noticed this. I really appreciated this in you, you know? And my dad's done that as well, like with us in person, with you and I. Like, I think it's a good thing to, it doesn't stop when we become adults. Like, yeah.
And I think it's really powerful coming from another guy. Because
Oh, for
girls,
sure.
like, I know my mom has done that too,
For
but
sure.
but I don't know. Again, you just never know.
Well, I think you're right. There's a lack of verbal affirmation and written affirmation between guys. I agree with that. I mean, I think that's kind of changing, but I agree with that, and that needs to change. I would say there's also a too great of an appreciation on the lack of positive affirmation in females. So, like, for example, you expect that your female friends, your mother and your sister, consistently give you the positive affirmation that you expect. And you do feel bad when you don't get the affirmation you did expect. I would say I don't feel bad when I don't get it, but I really love and appreciate when I do get it. So it's kind of two ends of the spectrum. I agree with you. Guys need to be more affirmative and more communicative around things they recognize. But I think women can put less expectations around having to receive those compliments so that they do appreciate the ones that are genuinely provided.
Mm, I like it. So another thing they talk about in this chapter is just being careful with words of affirmation because it can put, too much of a focus on outward appearance or
Mhm.
it can link things unhealthily, if that's a word.
Yeah,
So you don't want to link the words of affirmation just to their performance, like, oh, you played a great game, great job, I'm proud of you type of thing. You also, I love you should stand alone, not like I love you because you did this or I will love you
yeah,
if I do this. And that can be really hard for kids because it can be an easy way to manipulate them. Also, don't tie the positiveness to an action. So don't say like, "Oh, you're really strong. You should take out the trash," or "You're really strong. You should play football." Just say, "You're really strong." Period. The end. It's not inherently wrong to say those things, but it could make the child or the person feel like they're not doing something they should or, you know, I'm sure people the best example I can think of right now is, people who are tall, they're like, "Oh, you must play basketball or you must play volleyball," and
I
like
got that a lot, and I was not
they
a great basketball player.
they have so many other qualities, and just because of a physical attribute is what you see doesn't mean that that's what they should play on or that it's even their strongest skill.
Yeah, yeah, and I think like it's okay to suggest those things, but like to your point, to assume, oh, you are this, so you must also be this. That's where it breaks down a little bit. And I also like what you said about connecting. Like it's okay to appreciate and communicate appreciation for an action, especially if it's a positive and a good action. But to your point, if you're like, you want to also focus on the identity, right? So it's not, hey, that was a great kick. I loved that kick. It's that was a great kick. You're such a great soccer player and you try so hard. Like you're attaching appreciation not only to that singular action, to your point, but to who you are and the effort behind it and like, more of who the kid is as opposed to that one instance of what they've done.
Yeah, definitely, and there's even been thoughts around saying, like, "I'm proud of you," which I don't think is inherently wrong, but saying, like, "You should be proud of yourself," or saying, like, "You've been working so you did a great job, you've been working really hard at that," and
Yeah.
complimenting their behavior so that they're not always looking outwardly for others' approval.
Yeah.
And they can, feel good about what they did themselves. Another thing, I think it was in the book Siblings Without Rivalry, they talked about it, but when you're complimenting a child on something they did well, compliment them as the person. So
Yeah.
if you see a child sharing, you're like, "Oh, you shared so well, you're so sweet," versus "That was so sweet," so they know that they are
Yeah. Yeah.
sweet.
Yeah. That's good.
Whereas if it's something that's negative that you have to, correct, don't say you're bad or like you did something wrong. You can say like this was wrong. So don't attach it to the child.
Yeah. Separate the action from the identity if it's negative. That also makes me think of the previous love language of physical touch. Like there is a way to affirm through physical touch. Like it reminds me of the experiment I told you about a long time ago, where affirmation through words was provided, a high five was provided, and no affirmation was provided to children after specific positive actions. And the one that prevailed was the high five. the affirmation through physical touch. Not to say the words aren't important, but just if we're thinking of affirming our kids, words are not the only way. And it would be nice to show and recognize, hey, this kid would rather get the high five or the nod or the recognition visually, as opposed to like them being told. And sometimes kids can be the other way, but just affirming is not specific to words, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So affirming the good behavior, whether it be in any of the five love language, and then disassociating the negative behavior, which makes me think of one of my favorite movies. I think it's so underrated. It's Raising Helen with Joan Cusack, Kate Hudson, and Hayden Panettiere. And there's this. I'm not gonna like ruin the movie for you, but it's been out for I don't know 20 years since mini skirts and Uggs were in,
Statute of
and
limitations is passed. You can say it's fine. It's just like ET, and it's like Sixth Sense. We know.
we know,
You go
yeah.
ahead.
Yeah. So the premise is, and it happens at the very beginning, is that there's three sisters. One of them passes away, and she has children, and it ends up being left to Kate Hudson's character, Helen, which is really surprising because she's single, partier, fun, the fun aunt, not Joan Cusack, the motherly aunt. And so Helen has to go get Hayden Panettiere's character because she's off with this guy that she shouldn't be off with, and she can't do it. She's like, I can't go in the hotel room and embarrass her. And Joan's like, okay. So she goes in and she gets Hayden out of there, and she says to her date, you are not a bad person, but this is very bad behavior. Very bad. And I just love that because she plays it so well. But she's not saying he's a bad person, but that this is bad behavior. And there she is implementing disassociating the negative behavior with the kid. There's still a chance for you yet. You don't have to keep making mistakes, type of thing. And
Yeah.
it's a good movie. Go watch it.
Yeah, that's good. This is a loose connection too, a very loose connection, honestly, but it reminds me for some reason of praise in public and criticize in private, you know?
Yeah. For sure, which actually leads us to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which
What a
there's a
team we are.
there's a lot of studies or back and forth rather on like do you praise your kid or not? And kind of in America right now we're in this overly praised society, and I think it's the I don't know, is it like the snowflake society of like everybody gets a participation trophy or ribbon or whatever, where it's just like we feel like we have to say, "Oh my gosh, you did such a good job." And it's really the studies have shown that's not the best thing. And, I think it's okay to realize and start over and change. There's a lot of things, the parenting suggestions that have changed over the years. Like I said, I'm in the middle of the 5 principles of parenting right now, and they're talking about how things have changed. And, in the 20s, I think it was recommended to give your 6-month-old a cup of coffee a day. Obviously,
That's a
not
great
something we
recommendation. Oh, no.
not something we do anymore. Like in the 20s, I think is also like leaving your child alone will help them develop a sense of like pride and do
So
it
funny.
yourselfness.
Yeah.
Or like putting your baby in a cage, that type of thing. So lots of things have changed. And I think it's okay to change and adapt and do better when you know better.
Um, with respect to over praise, to use the word you did, I can understand why we're kind of in that era based on the lack of praise and affirmation that a few generations got. So I get the overcorrection, but I do feel like we're kind of in that overcorrected phase. And I don't think, to our earlier point with respect to affirmation in general, it's obviously not bad to affirm, but there's like a line, and who knows how specific it is, but like we shouldn't always expect to get affirmed. We shouldn't always expect positive reinforcement. We should appreciate it when we get it, but we should be getting it, right? And it's the same thing from the giving perspective. Like we should be giving it, but not over giving it. We should be giving it, but not holding it back so much that people think they'll never receive it, So there's somewhat of a balance.
Yeah, and it makes me think of whenever I was in my abusive workplace where I got fired. I remember him telling me in the like exit interview, if that's what you want to call it, saying like, and you're not direct and you don't take stuff directly. And I'm thinking, no, I do. Cause I also had said like, I don't need positive reinforcement per se. Like I can work on my own, whether you tell me I'm good or not. And he was like, you do need positive reinforcement. I'm thinking, no, I just don't need negative all the time. Like if all I get is negative, then yeah, I'm going to have a problem with that. So I think a major thing with words is you can receive the right message in the wrong manner. Words of guidance shouldn't be given in too harsh of a way, or otherwise your kid is only going to hear the harshness. So, like, it gave an example in the book of like, don't drink and drive. Like, so a lot of times when you're that, and obviously don't drink and drive. But when you're that specific, like I've seen this in friends I've had where their parents were so strict and so harsh about it, they swung the other way because they didn't want to listen. And all those parents were also probably saying like, "Don't yell, we don't yell," and then they're yelling when communicating that. So it's like I
Yeah.
can't really respect what you're saying because you're doing the same thing to me.
Yeah.
And so just to keep that in mind. And then also kind of on the flip side is like words of affirmations are great. And I think it can seem a bit woo woo to people, but they really are helpful in making you think about yourself in a good way. And so something we've started doing with the twins at night are affirmations. They do them at church some too. But just, ending on a good note, also starting the day with affirmations. We haven't done that, but maybe we should. But just remember that's not woo woo. There's like science behind it, and that it might be something you consider doing with them or even yourself.
As somebody who has woo as one of my strength finder words, I don't take offense to the word woo woo. So woo woo is fine. But I hear what you're saying. You're right. It's not fluffy and weird. It's actually backed up. Um,
Yeah, and whenever you do those things with your children, it can actually lead to great quality time, which leads us to number 3.
well, I had one more thing to say.
Oh, sorry, keep going.
um, you're correct that we should apply importance to affirmations, even though we're saying let's not over affirm. Um, it is like, how did you say it? You said you can't imagine the importance or how the positive effect it could have on somebody to receive a positive affirmation. Like hearing somebody else unprompted give you positive feedback about something that you are proud of or something that you have tried really well or tried to do really well is really special. But also here, and this is maybe is just me, but like I get a ton of satisfaction and joy out of people pointing positive things out about me and my character when I'm not proud of those things or haven't tried to fix those things or do better at those things. Like somebody calling something out in you that's great that you aren't thinking about or you're feeling low about is really, really powerful.
Well, and what I was thinking about when I was writing this outline is, which we'll kind of talk about at the end, but I'll mention it now, is whenever someone is acting a certain way, it could be a cry for wanting the love that way. And so for example, with you, we've talked about it before. With you is that sometimes like I've requested something, whether it be help around the house, and then all you hear when I ask that is that you didn't do something and you've been doing these other things and it frustrates you. And I'm like, oh, I could be I know that you're a words of affirmation person, but like I could be using more words of affirmation for you to build you up to where like your love tank in that way may have been low. And like that could be helpful, and it's pretty easy change to make. So
And you
there's a
have been better about that. We've talked about that as well, not just to you, but both of us. Like we've tried to start complimenting each other when it feels like something small or trivial, but we recognize like this is good. This is in line with what we both want. Like if you see
yeah.
me take the trash out or whatever, like it's an obvious tiny thing. And do I
Yes.
need to hear it every single time? No, but it's nice to hear especially when it's a chaotic day. It's nice to hear each other acknowledge like, hey, saw this, appreciate it.
Yeah, or like you asked me to take your clothes to the cleaners yesterday before I went to the chiropractor, and then when I got back, you thanked me for it when you really
I
didn't.
hope I
So
did. I was
that's
just fearful that I
no,
didn't.
you did.
I tried to. If I didn't, yeah, good.
You did.
Good.
It is Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day. If you forgot to get someone a Valentine's Day gift, or you still want to, or maybe you didn't get one, or maybe you just want to treat yourself, consider Lunia this Valentine's Day. They have the most comfortable, chic loungewear, and you can get a discount with code.
BGMAD.
They had some really cute special edition colors come out for Valentine's Day, but honestly, their classic navy and classic black, and then their OTM tan are so good, so beautiful, and I honestly always feel good wearing them.
They're great. And they look great.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and
BGMAD.
BGMAD, but they also do have a guys line called Lago, Lahgo, and Nick has some of that, and he likes them too. They're fun.
Yes, I do. BGMAD. BGMAD. Go use it. Save money.
So, number 3,
Number 3 is quality time.
the main thing I think about with this is the song from, I think it's the 60s or the 70s, The Cat's in the Cradle and the Silver Spoon, Little Boy Blue and the Man in the Moon. It's a song about like a little boy who asks his dad to play and he never has time because there's bills to pay. And then the boy grows up and the dad's like, "Hey, can we hang out?" And he's like, "Sorry, I've got bills to pay too now." So it just was a bad
Don't you love
cycle.
when you hear a happy song and you figure out its meaning is kind of depressing? It's my favorite.
I think it was always depressing, but quality time,
Sounds like such an upbeat, happy song to me. I don't know that I always assumed it was
the
depressing.
melody is not. So it
Oh,
kind of
okay.
it's yeah. Yeah. But quality time, I think we're kind of living in an age where it's hard to do quality time with all the distractions, whether it be your phone or, just what's going on outside, TV, any of that. But you can read a book with your kids, you can go on a walk, simply having meals together or doing something that they love, like go to Starbucks and they can have milk or something while you're drinking your coffee or go have a lemonade. I know La La Land, no, La La Kind Cafe, whatever it's called. I like to get their Arnold Palmer. It's so good. Um, Quality time can mean just the focus is on you. So like eye contact and keeping the eye contact because no eye contact is considered like dismissive usually from when parents don't look at their children when they're talking. Maybe they're cooking with you, helping you put in the ingredients. One of I think our twins' favorite quality time was when um, we built a pillow fort on the floor and watched Lion King, which is honestly out of necessity. Nick was in a pretty bad car accident and still has back pain from it. And so one weekend he literally couldn't do anything. Like he couldn't like do anything, is how I'd say it. And so we all wanted to hang out. And so we like took all the pillows off the couch and put blankets down and watched Lion King and they love it and still ask for it.
Yeah.
So I think there's lots of ways to have quality time that don't involve money and are really simple. And it doesn't have to be long, like 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
So what would help me is defining quality time, and I'm going to give my definition from my brain, and you tell me if you agree or disagree. In my opinion, quality time is like the difference between quality time and time is if your child or children is actively participating with you and they are the focus or partially the focus of what's happening. So like a comparison with cooking. If they're cooking with you, them standing on the floor and watching you cook is different from them sitting on the counter or on a tall step stool helping you put ingredients into the bowl, right? So they're both cooking. One I would say is quality time, one I would say is kind of just time, right? And to your point, like screens are not inherently bad. If we're throwing our kids in front of a screen to babysit them, I wouldn't call that bad, but I'm not sure that's quality time. But if we're having a pillow fort moment and we're talking about the movie and it's a special one from our childhood and they're engaging with us, that to me I would consider quality time. So I think it's about the intent and how direct you are and how with your kid and how much they're participating in the thing that you're doing. It's not a specific type of thing you have to be doing.
Yeah, I like your definition, but I would also say you said it's your child spending the time with you. I
Hmm.
would honestly flip it on its head and say you spending the time with your child because
Sure.
children lose and engage. Like they come and help me cook, but sometimes they just want to get down off the counter. And so I think it's taking it for what it is. And oftentimes as adults, we are the ones who are distracted more than the kids.
I
And so I
agree with
would
that.
say that it's important to stay focused. Something that we're trying to do these days, which is really hard for me, is and also good, but it's also hard, but just spending time with them one on one. So like this past Saturday,
Yeah.
I took Olive to the American Girl store and we ate in the cafe and she brought her bitty baby doll and that's so fun. But I also miss Cypress and of course Nick, but I miss Cypress, but it was always me and them. Like they were in my stomach together. And so it's a little bit hard for me to like separate, but I know that it's good and I do want that like individual relationship with them, but spending time with your kids, even if it's just, a timer is on 15 minutes, you have 4 kids, that's about an
Yeah.
hour to add that up correctly. You just like go through each one and not like a checklist, but just making sure that you're getting that.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I would also say like a good comparison for us adults is like we all know how it feels to go hang out with a friend and the friend is distracted or the friend's on their phone or the friend is not paying attention to you. That to me is not quality time, you know? So like what we can do is probably watch how we're engaging with our children and try our hardest to not make them feel that way. Like there's obviously other things that we need to do. We're pulled in millions of directions as parents, especially parents with like I don't know, a bunch of other commitments and stuff like most of us have. Like it's okay to have those thoughts and need to do a bunch of things. But if your kid feels like they're secondary to whatever else is going on, that's something you don't want.
Yeah. And so if you maybe you work outside the home all day and you have long hours, there are lots of studies around just like the last 15 minutes of bedtime being so
Yeah.
impactful and making your kid feel safe and loved. Like sit with them, talk with them, ask them those questions that aren't like, did you have a good day at school? Like ask them like, what made you laugh today? Did anything make you sad? Those type of things. Read books with them. That's spending time with them and they'll appreciate
Yeah.
that. And speaking of books, I meant to mention this earlier, but my book is out now.
You're what?
My book. I wrote
You've
a
mentioned
book.
this already, right?
I've mentioned it, but I've never shown it. So this is my book. I wrote it for twins. It's called It Takes Two, a special book for twins. And if you are a twin or have a twin, or people can read it who aren't twins. It's just about twins. But I wrote it for twins, my twin specifically. How many times can I say twin? Um, anyway, it's out now. I'll put the link in the show notes, but check it out.
I would say if you have twins, it's a must have, and I don't just say it because it's my wife who wrote it, but I think that from an objective twin parent perspective, it's very valuable to have a twin read that book. And also, I would say like it's definitely a great to have if your kid is not a twin or you don't have twins, because it talks about how twins are just not the same, right? They're not like in every aspect exactly the same, and we should treat them as individual people. So I'm sure your kids are going to come in contact with cousins or friends or whoever else that are twins, and it's good to know like, hey, I need to treat these people as their own person and love them individually as opposed to just a partner and package deal.
Yeah, I wrote it because I didn't really love any of the twin books on the market. There are some good ones, but a lot of them are identical twins or they're animals, and I just didn't see a lot of diversity in it. So I really tried hard to be inclusive and yeah, check it out. The next one, it'd also be a good gift, which leads us to unless you had something else for quality time. Want to go to number 5?
I did have something for quality time. So something that I like, I like what you said about the last 15 minutes, right? So the point is not like don't work or don't have things outside of hanging out with your children. Like we have things that we have to do away from them. But I think being intentional and communicating with them about when you need to do those things, when your attention needs to be pulled, and when you're focusing on them is also good quality time. So, for example, like our kids know that I work and they know that you work and they know when mom and dad are working. And they've started, I really love this. Like they've started recognizing when we say, oh, Papa has to go to work. Olive will like push me into the room and she'll shut the door and say, okay, Papa working now. And she'll shut the door. And it's not that obviously she wants to be away from me. And of course, I don't want to be away from her. But she knows, hey, this isn't time that's quality time. This is time where Papa has to go do something. And then as soon as I open that door before I come downstairs, you know this, like they hear the door and they always yell, Papa, Papa. Like they're excited to see me. And if you've been away for a while, they're excited to see you as well. But I like that there's a delineation in their minds between when can we have quality time with Papa and when are we not able to, right? And I think that speaks a lot to the 15 minutes thing. Like if that's what you have to give, focus on that time. If you can focus on the morning routine, focus on that time. Just when you're with them, be present. Like to go back to my friend analogy, if you're out hanging out with a friend and they need to answer a message or do something for work or whatever, we always have to do those things. But I hold the friend in much higher regard that says to me, like, hey, give me a second, got to answer this message. I don't feel unimportant in that moment. I understand they've got other things to do. And then they come right back to me. I hold that in higher regard than the friend who I'm not really sure is ever listening to me and they're always texting or they're always responding to something. It's not that I don't assign importance to what they're doing, but I don't know what they're doing. So my point is like communicating about the quality time is a big step in making sure your kids and your friends understand, oh, this time's for me, or this
Yeah.
may not be a time that's for me, or something like that.
Yeah, listening is huge in that part. And I
Yeah.
actually misspoke. It's not number 5 next. It's number 4.
Hey, I bet nobody else picked that up except for you, but now they all know.
Yeah. So it's not about being perfect, it's about being good, right?
Hmm.
Number 4, receiving gifts, which this might be the same level of straightforwardness as physical touch, but gifts. Presents. My friend Megan, we call them like sussies, like surprises. We'll send each other like random sussies just to let her know that or us know that we're thinking about each other. And I think those off chance gifts are often more special because you're not expecting them. They're just really fun to send and to get.
Yeah.
Um, and like with kids specifically, obviously they like to open presents. probably opening is more fun for them than even sometimes the presents inside. But also know that some gifts that you give them now like won't be realized until later. Like if it's a piece of jewelry or, a special hand down thing, they won't necessarily understand the gravity of that. I mean, I know I received from my grandfather when I turned 16, that was my grandmother's, and she had passed already, but she'd always said like her first granddaughter would get her diamond drop necklace if she was a very good girl, like when she turned 16. And so I got that. And then I got a letter from my grandfather, which equally honestly both hold a heavy weight for me, but I didn't know that. I liked it and I understood, but I didn't really understand until later. And so I wouldn't necessarily hold off on giving things, or be disappointed if you give them something that they don't like now that they will like in the future.
Yeah, they may have a deeper level of appreciation in the future, to your point. And also, that's a good lesson for gift givers. If they don't show the appreciation that you expect right away, you're not a failure. Like you still had beautiful intent in giving that gift.
Honestly, I have gift opening anxiety, and then I'm going to like not
That's why I
show the
brought that
right
up.
response, and to where like then it makes me just nervous even opening the gift, to where
I
like
would
I don't want to
say
open in front of people.
I would say you have gift giving anxiety on both sides, the giver and the receiver. Like you worry about how I'm not criticizing, I know how much effort you put into picking great gifts. And like, I've never met anybody that gives gifts as well as you do and as intentionally as you do. But I think that brings with it your expectation that you're gifted in the same way. You're also conscious of how you look when you receive a gift and whether you're showing the appreciation that the other person expects you to show. You expect a certain level of appreciation from the people you're gifting because you put so much time and effort and thought into it. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah, I think my main thing that frustrates me is like if I send a gift and then I just never hear from the person, not
Yeah.
as in like a thank you, but in like I wonder if they got it type of way. I'm
Yeah.
not giving it for the thank you. And I think why it frustrates me sometimes about gifts, if I get something and I'm like, why would you give this to me? Because I find it so easy to give people gifts, and I know not everyone is that way. Like obviously, like as you
It
said,
does
like I
come
have
easy to
a
you.
I have like kind of a gift that way. Um but I enjoy figuring out what people like or might like because I like keep a stockpile in my head of like, oh, they said they like this smoothie from Erewhon, or like I have a note on my phone for Nick, and it has like some stuff for the twins too, that I keep a running list of things I think they would like, or it has some other people on there too. But just like always thinking and just being aware of just random things of a restaurant they said they liked, or a shoe or something like that, that I can go back and revisit that thought. And I think even if someone's gift or someone's love language is not gift giving, you can gift them in a way that does serve their love language.
Yeah.
So, like, it doesn't have to be some extravagant thing. If their gifts are acts of service, gift them a coupon book. If their gifts are words of affirmation, write them a card. So, there's just simple ways to do that to
Yeah.
show them love, especially if that's your way that you like to show love to people. Um, and on that note about gifts and monetary value, I put so much weight on the thought, like, that's what I personally care about, and I think it's important to teach kids at a young age to celebrate all gifts, not just, like, monetary value ones. And I
Yeah.
think at a young age, that's easy because they're like, "Cool, a box. I love that more than the gift." But I think, that is something to say, like, make sure they're saying thank you. Writing thank you notes was a big thing. I remember my mom had us always write thank you notes after birthday parties, and she may have written a outline, but of how to write it, but we had to handwrite it. And so just being thankful and employing that early as well.
Yeah. And I think it's good to assign appropriate appreciation to gifts as well. Like you know, I don't want our children to think that if they don't love the gift they get, that the person doesn't care about them. You know, that's something important to me because like the person that is giving you something is assuming you're going to be happy about it. And it doesn't mean you should show a fake reaction or anything, but just don't attach, do they actually care about me so much to what are they giving me?
Are you speaking to me right now?
I really wasn't, but you started looking at me weird. I really wasn't. I really wasn't. I think I again, from what I said earlier, like I think you are so good and so intentional with the gifts that you give that you understandably expect others to be the same way. And you're getting better about that. But like I may intend, this has happened directly with us. So tell me if I'm not okay talking about this. I may have put a lot of thought and effort into a gift, monetary value aside, that I thought you would love, that you haven't loved, and that has made you very sad because it wasn't something that you thought you would actually appreciate, and you were annoyed that you thought I would assume you would appreciate it. So like, I know that you're not upset with me or you don't want to make me feel bad for giving you something like that. Um, but I think it's good for our kids to understand, like, somebody is trying to make me happy. Not every gift is going to be perfect. Most gifts aren't going to be perfect, you know? So that's okay. The intent and the act of giving something is special. And if we recognize, like, receiving gifts is one of the love languages of this person, maybe I put a little more effort into what I'm picking that person out. I don't know if you agree with that, but
Yeah, no, I think sometimes it just feels like someone isn't thinking about me at all, and so that's what frustrates me versus and I know versus, like, the other way, but I hear what you're saying, I think that's just harder for me.
somebody who's given you a gift can always not give you one. So in my opinion, it's okay to have different levels of appreciation about the gift that you're getting. But to assign any negative value to a gift that you're receiving, unless it's malicious, which honestly, most of the time it's not going to be, I think that's something I don't want them to have. Like, I've seen people open gifts before and have this is not you at all. I've seen other people open gifts before and have a direct, immediate, like, negative reaction. And that's, in my opinion, not okay.
Well, and to be fair, I think the thoughts I've had about gifts where there have been negative or I feel bad about myself is when there's underlying issues with the person
Sure.
giving
Of
me the
course. Yeah.
gift, and so it's like, I already think this person doesn't care about me, and this is just another sign that they don't.
Yes, and I get that, and I'm not saying that's irrelevant or not valuable, but I think, like, there is a positive aspect to every intent to give a gift. And it's a separate thing. Like, how you react is a separate thing. How you respond to it is a separate thing. Like, it's just not a negative thing. I don't know. Like, for
Yeah.
example, like, we're not talking in words of affirmation about whether you like the compliment you're getting. Like, it's such a unique thing with gifts. If
Your
somebody
breath
is,
smells great.
yeah, yeah, I know. Like, how do I say this? I think that with gifts, it's such a personal and specific thing, that there's this concept of not liking a gift, but, like, we don't not like compliments. Like, it's what I'm trying to say
Backhanded
is
compliments, but, whatever.
you're qualifying everything I'm saying with a negative. I'm trying to keep on the positive. Okay. Yes, there are specific situations where there can be a malicious compliment. There can be a malicious gift. I think those are the minority. If we set those aside, we should be appreciative of every compliment we get. We should be appreciative of the gifts that we get. And it doesn't mean we have to pretend to like them, pretend to love them, pretend they're the best gift that we have ever gotten, or give a fake response. But if somebody is choosing to gift us with something, that's a beautiful thing. If they're choosing to compliment us, that's a beautiful thing. If they're choosing to show appreciation with touch, that's a beautiful thing, right?
Yeah,
That's what I'm trying to say. I want our kids to be brought up to understand, like, if somebody is trying, that's worth recognizing. And that's a positive thing. No?
yeah, sure, sure, yeah, yeah. Not to make it negative again, though, I think that a way gifts can be bad is when they're conditional. Like, I will give you a gift
Sure.
if, so, like, that's when it
Agreed.
can be bad for kids. But we have been potty training, and that all flies out the window for potty training. It's like, "Do you want a lollipop?
I
Do
don't
you
think
want a
that's
monster truck?"
manipulative. Yeah, I don't
It's
think that's
not.
manipulative. No. Well, I mean, I think that's reinforcing that good actions have good results. Like, for example, we're training them to, like, eat well. Like, we want to, eat good, positive things before we have our desserts, or, that's not the same thing as, to your point, gifting in a manipulative manner.
Yeah. Um, it was really hard for me at the American Girl store to like, Olive brought this puppy dog up to me and, like, wanted to buy it, and I just said, take a picture of it and I'll put it on, like, a birthday list or whatever. But it was really hard for me to show restraint because I want to buy her what she wants, but I think that's been hard, especially with kids and just, like, saying no
Yeah.
in a way I want to say yes all the time. But I
Yeah.
also don't want to have her conditioned to, like, yes, everything I say is a yes. So that's probably a good lesson in and of itself.
Yeah.
One of the things in the book. It said, like, "Have you ever met the love man? He's over there." And I forgot how he showed love, but it made me think of growing up at church. There was a man, I think his name was Oscar, but we called him the Candy Man. And he stood in front of the doors where you walk into the sanctuary and just filled his pockets every Sunday with Jolly Ranchers and would have them in his hand. And kids would come up and get a Jolly Rancher. And like, I
Hmm.
still remember him. And so, again, it doesn't have to be like a really big thing to be really memorable.
Yeah, that's sweet. That's really sweet.
And sometimes gifts are memories. So like we love to give, experience type of gifts to where like they can hold on to that. And I think it gets tricky because you're like, wait, what kind of love language is that? And love languages can overlap. So like an experience like a trip to Disneyland is quality time and it's a gift.
Yeah,
Um, it could be an act of service as you're helping someone like take them to Disneyland. So
yeah,
they can overlap in areas and that's okay. I think just getting the love that your kid needs is what's important.
yeah. Agreed for sure. Yeah, those are good.
Number 5, last but not least, acts of service. Before we get into that, if you're watching us on YouTube, you'll see that we look different. We
Yep.
had to pause. We had to take a pause the other day, and it's now 2 days later, and we are picking up recording.
Lighting is different. Hopefully, the sound's not too much different.
I looked cuter the last time, so
You look cute today.
yeah,
Comfy cute.
it's a different level. Yeah, it's a rainy day in LA today.
Yes, a weirdly rainy day in LA. Anyway, number
Yeah,
5.
we canceled all our plans. Number 5, acts of service. So I saved this one for last because I think it's probably the hardest to do in children specifically because as a parent, we're serving a lot of the time, if not all the time. And serving doesn't mean they get what they want all the time, right? We're not going to have cookies for breakfast every single day, but because we want what's best for them, which is sometimes not what they want. But your child's love language can still be acts of service. And
Yeah,
at this, it's differing in every age. I think it could be a mixture of quality time for them, like help me put my pants on, or, like help me make my bed, like let's do it together type of thing. There's a lot of that, I think, in at least the stage we're in toddlerhood of doing things together. And that's what acts of service looks during this time for us.
yeah, I would agree. Yeah, and I mean those things, while they don't feel like specific service to your point, like the lack of them is easily recognizable.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess it's sometimes annoying to be like, okay, like you can do this yourself, or, I'm trying to finish this one thing, but this won't be their active service love forever. And so just kind of looking at it from that lens.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know all 5 now and kind of how they relate to your children and examples of them, but how do you know your kid's love language? How do you tell what their love language even is? So the book says if they're under 4 years old, their love language hasn't fully developed yet. So you're probably not going to be able to figure what it is out yet. And to just sprinkle all the things evenly, which I think, again, as a parent, especially, I guess, kind of with like a kid under 4, you're probably already sprinkling all these love languages in kind of the things that you're doing. But don't fret if you're like, I don't know what it is. But they gave us ideas in the book to kind of figure them out. And so one of them, obviously, is just by looking at what your child prefers. Like when they're asking you something, what are they asking? Are they saying, "Can you come sit with me on the couch and watch a show together?" Are they like wanting to be with you in the kitchen and help you cook dinner? Or, do they want a hug? Those types of things. Another way is if your child is in between, they're not under 4, but they're not old enough to really decipher that, you can ask them either or questions like, "Do you want me to do your laundry or do you want me to take you shopping? So, do you want me to do an act of service or do you want quality time with me? Or do you want me to bake you brownies or do you want to bake brownies together? Or do you want me to bring you a cup of hot chocolate up to your room?" So, there are ways to ask and see
We
what
kind of
they
do that now too, even though
Yeah.
it's before their language is recognizable to your point.
Yeah, I think it's because 'cause we're in, like, the toddlerhood where presenting them with options make them feel, I don't wanna say seen, but they like their options and to feel like they have some sort of control.
Well, sure, but it also, I mean, I feel like it does accomplish the goal of finding out what they prefer. Like, one of our kids, for example, prefers the cuddle to soothe. The other one sometimes prefers space. So I mean, asking those option related questions is telling us what language do they need in the moment.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. And even like we talked about earlier in the episode, is that love languages can change. So just because they have one at 6
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's the one at 16. And I actually think we should go back and read this book every so often because they have lots of tips and tricks within the book of how to implement and like love your kids well through their love languages, and
Yeah.
divides it up into age sections. So, right now we are in the younger stage, but there's a teenage stage and there's everything in between. And so really only the first half of the book, maybe half, maybe a little less than half, is going over all of the love languages, and the rest are, very specific things. Like they have a section on like marriage, like a tiny section on marriage. They have a tiny section on like single parenting and love languages and things like that. So there's really something for everyone within the book. And I think it's one of those books you can go back and learn something new every time and then apply it differently every time because we're constantly evolving and changing as humans.
Hmm.
Another section that I'm not going to get into here just because that's not the point of this episode. It's like they have um, discipline in love languages, which I didn't really think about. It makes total sense. But again, when I was like, I don't need to read this book about kids' love languages because I read the other one, it's not something I thought about, like disciplining. And, you don't want to send a kid to their room to be alone if their love language is quality time. I mean, there's also a bunch of studies out now that saying that's not a good quote punishment anyway. And that like sending kids alone in their most like vulnerable state isn't great, but it's just another way to practice like better loving your child, even in disciplining, because love looks out for the interest of others and so does discipline. And if a child feels loved, they're typically easier to discipline, probably because they have more respect for you, and they know kind of what the heart of your best interest is. They also have an entire section on anger and how to deal with that within love languages too, which I thought was really cool. So in the book, they refer to a child and even like yourself, like they call it a love tank. So if your love tank is empty, you're, more likely to be angry, more likely to get in fights, um, not as easily, I don't want to say trained, but disciplined rather, because you don't necessarily have that respect or love built up.
And not as open to constructive criticism, right? To your point, like if you're upset, maybe that's not the time you want to hear, hey, can you do this?
Yeah, so in the book, they say, like, when your child may be acting out or not behaving their best, sometimes through their behavior, they're saying, do you love me? And what you need to ask yourself is, what does my child need in this moment? Oftentimes, it's easy to quickly react and, like, not necessarily bite back, sometimes bite back if, it's been a day, but think that it's about the pasta. When really, it's not about the pasta. Well, how do they need their love tank filled? And I found it
Pulling
in
in our Vanderpump Rules fan
yeah,
base, huh?
the new season's back, so just kinda have to pull it in. There I've seen it before, but I was scrolling Instagram the other day and I saw a picture of, how do toddlers say, "I need love," or, like, ask if I matter, and, it's all the kind of annoying things that toddlers do, like lick you or, like, maybe they smack you, and so all the different ways they're trying to get attention from you, which especially in this day and age, we have so many distractions, so they're trying to see, like, do I matter? And, like, what has my parents' attention that's not me? Not in a I don't I would never say it's, like, a malicious way or, what's the word some people use? Manipulative way, but it's just interesting because they don't know how to really show love yet per se, and they're trying to figure out, not necessarily your love languages, but how they can communicate it to you and how they can get your attention.
Yeah.
There's another one that I when I it was the night before we recorded the last part of this first episode. Uh, and it was a TikTok, and I was like, "Oh, that's perfectly going with what we're gonna talk about," but it was by Elizabeth Mitchell Johnson, and it was basically going over the love languages and saying, what if your child's not clingy? What if their love language is physical touch or, quality time? Or what if they aren't really bad about getting rid of toys? What if, like, gifts are their love language? Or what if, um I'm trying to think of the other ones, but you get the idea of just like reframing what's going on and seeing like what's actually happening under the surface. Ultimately, I think the underlying point of this whole book and really this episode is that kids are unique, people are unique, and they need to be loved uniquely. We've discussed this before in the Siblings Without Rivalry book. It's also in the Good Inside book by Dr. Becky, of just like kids don't want to be loved the same. That makes them feel like not special. And as a kid, you really want to feel special, especially with your parents. And, even, identical twins have different love languages and are different people and receive love differently and have different preferences. And so, really, when you're going to love your child, we just recommend like looking at who they are as a person and going from there, not necessarily what you did for other children or what your friend said works for their child, but honing in on your child specifically.
Something else I think about here is like it's good to know that our kids, each of them, need to be loved and appreciated in different ways, especially when you're hearing like advice from other parents or family members, because it just further proves that like not everybody's advice is going to work for you. And it's not a slight against their advice or against their intent in giving you advice or recommendations, but just like remind yourself, hey, it's great that this person had success with this strategy. It's not a perfect strategy. It's not a strategy that's going to work with every kid. Like the way they love their kid that was working for them. Maybe I can try it, but it does if it doesn't work for me, it's not like a bad thing. It doesn't mean I didn't understand the advice or that I'm not implementing it correctly. My kid may just need to be loved in a different way than I'm hearing the recommendation to love them. So it's kind of a release of pressure a little bit.
Yeah, and I follow Dr. Eliza, I think her name is. She's the one who just did launch the book, The Five Principles of Parenting. And I think I read a similar statement in the Siblings Without Rivalry book. But, it's good for your kids to see you to fail because it shows them how to react. Like it's we're not aiming for perfection here. We're aiming for our best. And that includes mistakes. And it's actually more helpful to see a parent mess up and be resilient and move on from that than it is to see a parent who doesn't ever make mistakes or doesn't make them known to their children, because then they may grow up with the complex of like, oh my gosh, I have to be perfect. And so you're doing your child a favor by making mistakes and fixing them and learning and growing from them right in front of their face. It's okay for your kids to see you fail. Also, let me while we're talking about making sure your kids' love tanks are full, you need to make sure your love tanks are full, because you can't parent from an empty cup, from an empty tank. How many different metaphors can we use? But I
Oh,
know that.
sorry, you wrote this differently than what you just said it. You can't parent well with an empty tank. You can parent with an empty tank. It's just not
Oh,
going to be your best parenting. Just
there
a
you go.
clarification.
Yeah,
Not correcting you. You're the one that wrote this. So this is coming
well,
from your
no,
brain.
thank you. I find that, when I don't take time to myself, I am way less patient and more quick to snap. And as much as I don't like to be away from them, I do think it's better for me, when I go take an hour to work out or, go spend time with friends, like adult friends, I come back with a new appreciation for them. And I think I'm able to be a better parent.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like we were able to hang out with a bunch of friends last night, and that's definitely recharging. Whether you're an introvert or extrovert, like especially when your time with people like that you want to spend time with is so limited when you're a parent, it's recharging. Yeah, like being loved by your friends and loved by the people around you that aren't just your immediate family is helps to fill your tank, to use your terminology.
Yep, definitely. I know that today is Valentine's Day, but I kind of wanted to mention it's some gift ideas if you still needed them, or some like favorite Valentine's Day books. This year I grabbed from us for the twins Lola Dutch, I Love You So Much, and then Construction Site, You're Just Right. We have several other Valentine's Day books in here. Let's see if I can see them. Love is a Tutu, Love is a Truck. Oh, Little Blue Truck Valentine's Day. That's a good one.
They love that one.
They love that one. The Give a Mouse a Cookie Valentine's Day one. Oh, no, I'll put a list of the books in the show notes just so you have them. The other thing we got them were cute little costumes from H&M. So one's a set of fairy wings and one's a dinosaur cape thing. Um, and then also some Play-Doh from Young and Wild and Friedman. I think that's her handle. I'll put it in the show notes. But I bought them little mini kits. So like Cypress got a space Play-Doh one, and then Olive got a unicorn one. And I'll actually give them the books. So we're recording this on February 1st, but I'll give them the books and the Play-Doh today, just so they can play with it and read it throughout the month. And then on Valentine's Day, we'll give them the little costumes, just so they can get the most out of their time with them. Um, the other thing is, if I know we mentioned Lunya already, but we are dropping a little bit of merch. So we have a boy girl mom hat. It's a 100% cotton 47 brand, if you're familiar with them. 6-panel cap with a cute little boy girl mom logo.
There's your merchandising history coming out, your
Mm-hmm.
experience.
Yeah, and like a cream lettering. It's a very small run, basically limited edition. I'm not sure if we'll do them again. We'll see.
If you don't know what a 6-panel hat is, welcome to the club. That's okay. I see you.
So imagine a circle, and it has 6 pie pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I just drew it. These are my show notes.
Got it. Great.
Yeah, and then imagine it going like this, and then that's the hat
Okay.
with the
I
bill.
know it. 6-panel. I get it.
Yeah, there are different ways to panel a hat. Anyway, those exist. And if you subscribe to our newsletter, then you have already seen them, because I sent them out on an email this week. And I've already got an email for some dibs. And yeah, just let you know those are there if you are interested. Let's move on to our final segment, Ask BGMAD. Ask BGMAD.
I was going to say we need like a sound clip for that or something.
I know.
Ask
Casey.
BGMAD.
Yeah. So this question was, how do I get my kids to be better eaters? I don't know, but we have some things
You don't
that
have a perfect answer for this?
I am not a nutritionist. I'm not a doctor. Here's what we do. Nick is really into wine and coffee. And so in that type of world, you're constantly smelling and eating things, raw ingredients. And so if I'm cooking, I'll bring him over. Go ahead.
I'll just clarify what you're saying. So, part of taste is smell, right? And it's something you don't typically pay attention to unless it hits you in the face or you're intentionally smelling something like a coffee, wine, spirits, whatever else. So to your point, one of the things we do with them is we have them like they smell their food. We have them smell. We don't give them coffee or wine or anything yet, but they'll smell my glass when I have some or when you have some, to build some of those olfactory
senses.
Yeah. And then the other thing you were referencing in tasting ingredients is something we like for them to do as well, not only to experience the cooking joy with us, which we try to pull into a lot. You're really good at that, Lauren. But like not forcing them, but giving them the opportunity to taste ingredients every step of the way in a safe manner, of course, like no raw chicken or anything, but like a raw piece of garlic or a raw piece of veggie, or some of the seasoning
Herbs.
or some of the oils that we've put together for salad dressing or something. Like having them have the opportunity to taste those things builds their appreciation for the final product. And like one way I see this playing out this week is that they've started to eat scrambled eggs with like veggies and seasoning in it, not just egg, so like that's not something I think a lot of 2-year-olds love to do, and they're scarfing it down right now. So
Yeah, and I've offered it like a veggie scramble them. I've offered a veggie scramble to them before. I literally just do scrambled eggs, mushroom if I have it, green bell pepper, onion, garlic, salt, pepper,
yeah,
maybe some cheese. Today it was smoked Gouda. And they haven't eaten it in the past. They didn't want that, but I made some earlier this week and they wanted to eat it. So I was like, okay, off my plate, because food tastes better off the mom's plate. And so today when I was making breakfast, I just made that specific one and they ate it. They didn't, pick out the green stuff. So I
yeah.
think constant exposure is something, if you eat it too, make sure you're eating together when you can, because they'll see you eating it, constant exposure of you eating it, that's all
And also
good.
like them seeing you eat the same things that they are. while you're eating with them is good. Like I recently they've started to like want to sit, even though we're sitting at their little table with them, they want to like sit as close to us as possible or try and sit on our laps and hold their plate. Like it's pretty apparent that they're happy that we're participating in eating with them.
Yeah, and earlier, I think it was last week, I had shared on my personal Instagram, I said not a original idea or really what's the word people use? It's not a crazy idea that's like
Not
no one's ever
revolutionary.
thought of. No, not revolutionary. There you go. Whenever I'm cooking, if the twins are interested, they come in the kitchen. Even if there's, something on the TV or they're playing a game, sometimes they want to be in there and cook and they like to sit on the counter. And it's a great way for them to taste new ingredients because oftentimes they want to try it. So I let them try it and I call them like secret bites of food. I'm like, no one has to know that we're doing this. And that makes it even more fun because it's forbidden, but even I'll make a macaroni and cheese and give them a secret bite of macaroni and cheese from the pot, which it does taste better from the pot before you put it in the bowl. um, and just give them a little bite there, and so it's become kind of like a fun game. But they're also exposed to lots of different ingredients just sitting there. Sometimes they are watching a movie. Right now, they still love Coco, but it's Encanto. They love Encanto right now, and I was cooking and I was using, I think, maybe parsley and sage or something, the fresh herbs, and I just went and brought them those leaves. I don't think they ate it, but they smelled it and they put it in their mouth to taste it. So they're just getting that constant exposure there. And one of my friends from middle school responded to that post and she said that they do counter dinners. And she's like, we do counter dinners all the time and it's like magic. Oh, son, here, mix this salad. You want a bite? Sure. Thanks for helping. Oh, you wanna eat on the counter? Sure. And then she said he happily eats salad with 3 ingredients he's never tried before whenever it's different than just, like, on the plate. So, maybe try something like that. Have them in the kitchen with you, have them cook. I know it can be hard at times if you're a very, like, intensive recipe, but maybe go take them an ingredient or something. I don't know. They'll
So
also eat bites of sides, like, right now they've always really liked beans, but, sometimes you just wake up and don't like something, but they especially like beans right now, and that, like, came to be again because they wanted a secret bite from the pot, and I was like, "Great." So now they're eating them hand over fist, like, we can't even eat our own beans because they want them.
something that strikes me here is the question says, how do I get my kids to be better eaters? I think defining better is interesting to think about. It's like I recall there was a nutritionist who was talking to a pediatrician, and they were saying success for your toddler's eating is way lower of a bar than you would expect. Like at some meals, them eating a few grapes or a few blueberries and being done with eating, that's not a failure. They've eaten and they've gotten what they need and it's okay. They need a lot less than you think they need, even if they're screaming at you and asking for more at times. So, like setting a full plate of options in front of them, better or success is not they finish the plate. It's that you've tried to make them something and they try pieces of every bit or even just approach it or smell it like you're saying, and then like it's not for them that day. So don't treat the, you know, whether they've completed it or whether they like something that's healthy or whatever as better or success. If you're feeding your kids and allowing them the opportunity to eat, that is success. So I wonder what the question asker was saying here. Like what does better mean to them? Because I think that bar is just lower than we feel like it needs to be as parents.
Well, even in just the other week, I said to you and to Nanny Sarah, I said, you know, I get discouraged sometimes, or I feel like I'm letting them down because we may eat macaroni and cheese every single day, but they're actually really good eaters. They're really good eaters. We do eat Annie's mac and cheese. That's our favorite. We eat the Just Bear chicken nuggets. They have that a couple times a week. I chop up sweet potatoes. They could eat pretty much every single fruit and still want more. We are working on the vegetables. They like avocados. They do a good job.
Yeah, I mean, some days it's only blueberries forever. Some days it's I hate grapes. Some days it's whole
Yeah.
pack of grapes. You know, like it just and
Some
that's
days
just the stuff they love. Like we try and give them portions and bites of the stuff we make as long as it's not super spicy or anything. You know, they are very good eaters. And that I guess to your point, like if you're listening, you're a parent, your kids are probably good eaters as well. Like the definition of good is are they getting what they need? It's not Are they getting like full completed meals and trying specific types of vegetables on a specific schedule? No, like if they're alive and they're with you, you're supporting them and giving them
That
what
is
they need.
best.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, so don't be too hard on yourself because you're probably doing a great job.
And remember, good parents don't ask how they can be better. Or excuse me, bad parents don't ask how they can improve. And you've asked the question, how can my kids eat better? Which means you're already feeding them well.
Yeah.
I don't know how much else we have for this one.
No, I think we're good. Wrap it
I think
up,
we
put
did
a
it.
bow on it. Happy Valentine's Day.
We may be in different outfits and on a different day, but you're still my Valentine. You already said yes.
Perfect. Tonight on Valentine's Day, we are making heart-shaped sourdough pizzas with the twins. It's going to be great.
Correct.
Very excited.
Praying that the rain leaves before then.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for listening. We love having you here. We love being back. And make sure to follow us on Instagram at boygirlmomdotcom. Keep up with us online at boygirlmom.com. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter. That's on the website too. We send out every Wednesday morning. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for growing with us.
Yay.
Yay. That's staying in. Bye.
I'm tired.
Jeez.
Yay. Yeah.
Boy, girl, mom, and dad. Gotta wash those butts together. It's a trip, but we'll guide you through with tips and tricks for boys and girls too.